Some legacies come wrapped in secrets. For Sarah, it began not with an inheritance, but with a silence so heavy, it fractured everything she thought she knew about her family. They laughed at her. Her siblings rolled their eyes when their father left her a broken-down roadside motel instead of money. "Take the 25 grand and walk," they scoffed. But the moment she discovered the brass key and unlocked the trap door beneath the office floor, they realized she hadn't inherited junk. She'd uncovered a $200 million secret that could ruin them all. The buzzing fluorescence of Ruby's grill flickered overhead as Sarah Lawson balanced 3 plates of pancakes and bacon on one arm. Her apron was dotted with stains from the double shift that had started at 5 a.m. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but she still greeted every customer with a warm smile. "Order up for table 4, she called, setting the plates in front of a couple and their 2 kids. "Anything else for you folks?" she asked. The dad looked up briefly from his phone. "We're good," he said. Sarah gave a quick nod and moved on, checking her watch. Just 2 more hours, then she'd head across town to pick up her sons from school. Jamie and Noah were 12 now. Bright kids with their dad's green eyes and her own stubborn streak. Thinking about them gave her the strength to push through the soreness in her feet and the dull ache in her back. As she poured more coffee, her phone vibrated in her apron pocket. Normally, Sarah wouldn't check during her shift, but the school's number flashed on the screen. She muttered an apology to the table and stepped away. "Miss Lawson? This is Principal Everett." Sarah's chest tightened. "Is Noah okay?" "He's fine physically, but there was a situation with another student. Some remarks were made about your living situation." Noah responded quite forcefully. Her heart dropped. "Did he hit someone?" "No, but his language was colorful. We need to schedule a meeting." "I'm on a double today. Can we—" "Miss Lawson, this is the 3rd issue this month." Sarah looked toward the kitchen, where her manager was already scowling. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, she said, already feeling the sting of lost tips and another strike against her at work. After a tense exchange with her boss, Sarah rushed to her car, a 15-year-old Toyota with faded paint and a stubborn passenger door. On the way to the school, her phone rang again. Her brother's name flashed across the screen, Ryan. She hesitated before answering. Calls from him rarely meant anything good. "Hey," she said, putting it on speaker. "What's going on?" "Where have you been? I've been calling all morning." Ryan's voice was sharp, impatient. "I'm working, Ryan. Some of us don't have jobs that let us answer the phone whenever we want." He ignored the jab. "Dad's lawyer called. The will reading is scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Sarah's grip tightened on the steering wheel. It had been 6 weeks since her father's heart attack. 6 weeks of pushing her grief aside to keep food on the table and the lights on for her sons. William Lawson had been her rock, the one person who never looked down on her. Now he was gone, and the pain still felt raw. "I have a shift tomorrow," she said. "Cancel it," Ryan snapped. "This matters." Sarah knew what he meant by the whole family. Himself, their sister Caroline, and their polished spouses, the successful side of the Lawson family. Not her ex-husband Greg, who had left her 3 years ago for his intern and now lived in a high-rise near the marina, while she scraped together rent for a 2-bedroom apartment. "I'll try," she said quietly. "But I can't promise." Ryan sighed, the sound crackling through the speaker. "This is exactly what Dad worried about. You never get your priorities straight." Before she could reply, he barreled on. "Caroline and I took care of the funeral, the estate paperwork, everything. And you've been doing what? Slinging hash?" Sarah pulled into the school parking lot, her hands trembling with a mix of hurt and fury. "I'll be there," she said curtly. "I have to go." She hung up before he could say anything else and sat for a moment, gathering herself before heading inside. This was her life now, a constant shuffle between long shifts and her son's bath needs, carrying grief alone, under the weight of her siblings' judgment. The meeting with Principal Everett went about how she expected. Noah sat silently in the corner, jaw set, while the principal discussed concerns about his behavior. Apparently, another student, Melissa, daughter of the PTA president, had made some nasty comments about Noah's clothes, saying they looked like thrift store rejects. Noah had responded with a verbal lashing that left no insult untouched. Principal Everett frowned. We're meeting with Melissa's parents as well, of course. But given Noah's pattern of responses, we're recommending counseling. Sarah felt her chest tighten. Counseling? That was another cost. One more thing they couldn't afford. We'll handle it at home, she said softly, placing a hand on Noah's shoulder. Sarah gave a soft nod, placing a hand on Noah's shoulder as they walked to the car. I'm not sorry, he said quietly, but with resolve. She always says stuff like that. Sarah unlocked the car. I know it's tough, she replied, but we can't let people like that know they've gotten to us. Dad would have let me fight back, Noah muttered as he slid into the back seat. He said sometimes you have to stand up for yourself. A fresh wave of grief swept over Sarah. Greg had barely been present since their split, showing up only when it suited him, occasional weekends, the odd school recital. His child support came in fits and starts, despite his cushy job. Yet somehow in her son's eyes he was still the fun one, the one who got it. Your father says a lot of things, Sarah said, keeping her voice steady, but he's not the one getting phone calls from the school. Noah went quiet, gazing out the window as they drove back to their apartment. Sarah tightened her grip on the wheel. Her son's silence spoke louder than words. Disappointment, confusion, a longing for someone who hadn't truly been there. And the guilt gnawed at her. No matter how many shifts she worked, how many school projects she helped with, she still felt like she was always coming up short. Jamie would be home by now, likely hungry and wondering what had happened. Sarah would barely have enough time to throw dinner together before heading back for her evening shift, the one she had already walked out of early. More lost hours. More lost wages they couldn't spare. As they turned onto their block, Sarah spotted a sleek black SUV parked in front of their building. Caroline stood next to it, flawless in a crisp designer pantsuit, sunglasses perched on her immaculately styled hair, even with the cloudy sky overhead. What's Aunt Caroline doing here? Noah asked. Sarah parked and took a breath. Caroline never came by unless there was an agenda. Tia Caroline! Noah called out as they approached, his voice suddenly chipper. Sarah recognized the act. He knew how much pretending everything was fine annoyed Caroline, who seemed to expect them to be visibly falling apart. Caroline slipped off her sunglasses, revealing perfectly done makeup that showed no trace of grief. Noah, darling, she said, offering air kisses. How are you holding up? I'm good, Noah said brightly. Mom's teaching me how to make Grandpa's special cinnamon rolls. Caroline's gaze flicked to Sarah, a quick flash of annoyance, or maybe surprise, crossing her face. How? Therapeutic, she murmured. Sarah, can we speak in private? Inside the cramped apartment, Jamie was seated at the kitchen table, textbooks open. Unlike his brother, Jamie channeled his emotions into his schoolwork. His grades were spotless despite the chaos. He looked up as they entered, his face lighting up for just a second at the sight of his aunt before slipping back into a careful neutrality. Tia, he said politely, rising to give her a hug, which she returned with visible stiffness. Why don't you boys head to your room? Sarah said gently, setting her purse down. Your aunt and I need to talk. Once the door clicked shut behind them, Caroline took a slow look around the apartment. Her eyes lingered on the sagging couch, the chipped dish rack, and the stain on the ceiling the landlord had promised to fix last fall. Sarah felt heat crawl up her neck. No words were said, but she could feel the judgment in every pause, every glance. This wasn't just a visit, it was an inspection. And somehow, even grief couldn't soften Caroline's sense of superiority. Ryan said you were being difficult about tomorrow, she said finally. Sarah let out a tired breath. Not difficult. Realistic. I have to work. It's not easy for me to just drop everything, even for Dad's will reading. Surely even you can find someone to cover one afternoon. Caroline's voice was deceptively calm, but the words landed like a punch. Even you. The implication lingered. Sarah, the failure. Sarah, the one who couldn't hold a marriage together. Sarah, the college dropout slinging hash at a diner at 38. I already told Ryan I'll be there, Sarah said, her tone flat, controlled. Is that all you came to say? She added, watching as Caroline turned to peer out the window at the mostly empty parking lot. No, Caroline said after a moment. I wanted to give you a heads up. Ryan and I have been looking over Dad's finances, and it's worse than we thought. Something in her voice made Sarah tense. The motel's been losing money for years. There are unpaid taxes. Loans. It's a mess. She turned back, face arranged in a mix of feigned concern and cool detachment. Dad wasn't exactly a savvy businessman. We all knew that. A familiar heat bloomed in Sarah's chest. He supported a family of 5 and put you and Ryan through college with that motel. That was 20 years ago, Caroline replied briskly. Before the hotel chains took over. These last few years have been rough. Ryan and I were helping him with bills. This was the first Sarah had heard of it. He never told me, she said quietly. Caroline's smile thinned. Of course he didn't. Not to you. He always wanted to be your hero. The words pierced deeper than Sarah expected. A quiet ache stirred. Shame she couldn't name. Maybe he had tried to shield her, but that also meant he'd hidden the truth. Did he think she couldn't handle it? Or worse, did he believe she wouldn't care? The realization stung. Her father had been her one unwavering supporter, the only one who'd believed in her even when she stopped believing in herself. The idea that he'd kept something this big from her made her feel like a child again. Excluded from the adult table, not trustworthy enough to be let in. For a moment, the room blurred at the edges. She blinked, forcing her voice steady. So why are you telling me this now? Because the estate's complicated, Caroline said. There's a lot to handle, debts to settle, property to manage. Ryan and I think it's best we oversee it. You've got enough to deal with. She glanced around, vaguely gesturing at the apartment. Sarah stood straighter. Dad was my father too. I want to help. Caroline's tone turned syrupy, almost condescending. Of course, but let's be realistic. What do you know about probate or real estate? Sarah opened her mouth, but no words came. She hated how small she felt in that moment. Hated that part of her agreed with Caroline. That little voice she fought daily, the one that whispered she'd failed too many times to deserve another chance, was suddenly loud again. It was always there, lurking. The doubt, the voice that told her maybe she didn't belong at the table. Maybe she really had missed her only shot years ago, when she dropped out, when she married Greg, when she traded dreams for diapers and diner shifts. Before Sarah could respond, the front door opened. Greg stepped in, still in his sharp office suit, face stormy. He barely acknowledged Caroline before locking eyes with Sarah. Where's Noah? In his room, she said, jaw already tightening. It's handled. Handled? Greg echoed, his voice rising. This is the 3rd time this month. If you can't control him. Caroline stepped in quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. She gathered her sleek purse and made for the door. Good to see you, she murmured before slipping out. Once the door shut behind her, Greg lowered his voice, conscious of the boys down the hall. This is exactly what I brought up in our last custody meeting. Your living situation, your hours, these kids need stability. Sarah felt her patience unravel. What they need is a dad who pays his child support on time and doesn't cancel weekends every time his new wife changes plans. Greg's jaw clenched. Stephanie and I have a lot of social commitments, and if you'd taken that office job at the insurance company instead of walking away. I left because they wanted 60-hour weeks for barely more money than I make now, with zero flexibility for the boys. Sarah cut him off. Greg never seemed to understand why she couldn't just make it work like the other divorced moms he liked to compare her to. He conveniently ignored the fact that those women usually had help. Supportive families, reliable exes who actually paid court-ordered child support. Sarah had stopped explaining a long time ago. The exhaustion of justifying her life to people who only saw failure, not the strength it took to keep going, was bone deep. Some days, she barely had the energy to argue. Greg glanced at his watch. I've got a dinner meeting. Tell Noah I expect better behavior. And Sarah, he added, with that patronizing edge to his voice, try to pull it together for the boys' sake. After the door shut behind him, Sarah leaned against it. She should have been getting ready for her night shift, not cleaning up the emotional wreckage her ex always left in his wake. But the bills didn't care. Not about stress, not about fairness, not about single moms with twins and half-missing income. The silence of the apartment wrapped around her like a weight. Some nights, she wondered how much longer she could stretch herself before something cracked. How much longer she could keep juggling plates with one hand while catching falling pieces with the other. She closed her eyes for a beat, willing the sting of helplessness to pass. Not now. not with the boys still awake. The bedroom door creaked open, and Jamie peeked out. "Is Dad gone?" Sarah nodded, mustering a tired smile. "Yeah, come on out, both of you. I've got to make something quick before I leave for work." As she pulled pasta from the cabinet, Noah emerged from the room, his face stormy. "I heard him. He thinks we should live with him and Stephanie." "He didn't say that," Sarah replied, setting a pot on the stove. "He doesn't want us there," Jamie murmured. "Stephanie calls us the baggage when she thinks we're not listening." Sarah froze mid-motion. "She what?" Noah gave a single nod. "Last time we were there, she was on the phone with someone and said she was stuck with the baggage for the weekend. That's why I don't want to go anymore." It was the first time Sarah had heard this, and it made her stomach turn. But she kept her tone steady. "I'll talk to your father." "No," both boys said at once. "He'll just say it didn't happen," Jamie said quietly. "And she'll be worse next time." Sarah looked at her sons, perceptive, brave kids who were being forced to deal with more than any 12-year-old should. They'd lost their grandfather, watched their family split apart, now faced bullies at school and a stepmother who treated them like cargo. "What do you want me to do?" she asked gently. The twins exchanged a silent glance, one of those wordless twin conversations that always amazed her. "Nothing," Noah said finally. "We can deal with Stephanie. Just don't make us go there more than we have to." Sarah nodded, slowly. "Okay, but you have to promise me you'll tell me if anything gets worse." She wanted to say more, to promise she'd fix it, protect them from everything, but the words felt like lies. Because deep down, Sarah didn't feel like she could fix anything anymore. That truth haunted her. She was the adult, the anchor, but lately she felt like she was clinging to the edge of her own stability. As she boiled the pasta and stirred in a jar of sauce, her thoughts drifted back to Caroline's visit, and the will reading tomorrow. What exactly had Caroline meant about the motel's finances? Her father had owned Lawson's Inn for as long as Sarah could remember. It was a small, roadside place just beyond the town's limits, only a handful of rooms and a tiny cafe attached. Business had slowed over the years, especially with the new franchises popping up, but William had always seemed to stay afloat. Had things been worse than he let on? Had Ryan and Caroline really been covering expenses behind the scenes? And if so, why hadn't he told her? The idea of him quietly struggling, too proud to ask for help, made Sarah's heart ache, and also made her question, had she been so absorbed in surviving her own chaos that she missed her father's silent plea? The guilt crept in, uninvited and sharp. After dinner, she slipped back into her diner uniform and called Mrs. Patel upstairs, the kind, retired teacher who watched the boys during evening shifts. Another expense she could barely manage. "I shouldn't be later than 11, Sarah said as she grabbed her bag. "They've got homework, then bed by 9:30. "Don't worry," Mrs. Patel replied kindly. "We'll be just fine." The night shift at Ruby's Grill was busy, which turned out to be a blessing, enough activity to keep Sarah's mind from spiraling. But between taking orders and clearing tables, her thoughts kept drifting to the next day. What exactly had her father left behind? Not much, if Caroline was to be believed. Still, the memories came as she worked. Her dad showing her how to patch a flat tire when she was 10, his patient voice walking her through math problems, the pride in his eyes when she won the middle school art fair, his quiet, unwavering support when she told him, at just 22, that she was pregnant and Greg had proposed. Even after the divorce, when her siblings had made their disappointment crystal clear, William never once faltered. "Life isn't a straight road, Mija," he'd say with his quiet smile. "Sometimes the best views come after the steepest climbs." By the time Sarah returned home, paid Mrs. Patel, and peeked in on the sleeping boys, it was nearly midnight. She should have gone straight to bed. Tomorrow would be long. But instead, she opened the bottom drawer of the side table and pulled out the old photo album. Her father had given it to her last Christmas. "So you never forget where you came from," he'd said, his accent still thick even after 4 decades in the U.S. The album was filled with snapshots of a younger William, newly arrived from Honduras, with nothing but grit and dreams. There he was, standing outside the inn on the day he bought it, beaming with pride. Sarah as a toddler perched on his shoulders. Birthday parties, school plays, graduation ceremonies. He had captured it all, an entire family story in images. The final photo was recent, William with Jamie and Noah at their 12th birthday party. His health had already been declining then, though he hid it with practiced ease. Now, staring at the picture, Sarah could see it, the weariness behind his eyes, the forced stretch of his smile. She gently closed the album and wiped her cheeks. Tomorrow she would face her siblings, her ex, and whatever truths came with her father's estate. But for now, she gave herself permission to grieve the man who had been her anchor in every storm. "I miss you, Poppy," she whispered into the quiet. The next morning was damp and gray, as if the sky had tuned itself to match her mood. She'd called in sick from her morning shift. Her manager was understanding, but not lenient. One more no-show this month and her job could be in jeopardy. After sending the boys off with extra long hugs, Sarah stood at her closet, staring at the limited options. She didn't own much in the way of formal wear. Eventually, she chose a black dress she'd worn to a friend's wedding last year, paired with the only heels she had that weren't falling apart. As she brushed on a little makeup, her phone rang. "Greg." "I've been thinking about Noah's situation at school," he said by way of greeting. "Stephanie and I were talking, maybe the boys should spend more time with us. Our district schools are much better." "Not now, Greg," Sarah cut in. "I'm on my way to my father's will reading." There was a pause. "Right, I forgot that was today. Any idea what he left you?" The question came too quickly, too slick. "Why are you asking?" "Just curious," Greg said, tone too casual. "He owned that inn outright, didn't he? That's prime property." So that was it. Even after 3 years, Greg's knack for sniffing out financial opportunity still managed to catch her off guard. "I have to go," Sarah said, ending the call. She ended the call and finished getting ready, a fresh worry threading itself into the pile already weighing her down. If Greg suspected she might be inheriting anything substantial, he'd absolutely try to use it, either to lower child support or, worse, to reopen the custody agreement. The attorney's office was downtown, inside one of the newer glass and steel towers that dotted the city's small skyline. Sarah parked her aging sedan in a public lot 2 blocks away. No way was she pulling up next to Ryan's Tesla or Caroline's sleek Range Rover. As she walked, clutching her father's photo album like armor against her chest, Sarah mentally rehearsed what she might say. To defend herself? To explain herself? To protect what was left of her pride? The receptionist directed her to the 3rd floor, where Michael Reeves, her father's longtime attorney, kept his office. As she stepped off the elevator, she spotted her family instantly. They hadn't noticed her yet, giving her a moment to take them in. They looked exactly as they always did, successful, composed, impeccably dressed. Ryan, tall and broad like their father, but with none of his warmth. Caroline, all their mother's delicate features sharpened into a face permanently fixed in judgment. It was Ryan who looked up first. "About time," he muttered, glancing at his watch. Caroline followed his gaze, eyes quickly scanning Sarah's outfit. The almost imperceptible downturn of her lips gave away her silent verdict. "Sarah, you look well-rested." Before she could answer, a door opened behind them. "Sarah," Michael Reeves said warmly, stepping into the hallway. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-frame glasses. He had been more than just William's lawyer. He'd been a friend. "It's good to see you," he said, pulling her in for a brief hug. The unexpected kindness nearly cracked through the careful shell Sarah had built around herself. She hugged him back, just for a moment. "Thanks for setting this up," she said softly. He gave her a nod, then turned to the group. "If you'll all come in, we're ready to begin." The conference room was all dark wood and leather chairs, formal and heavy. Reeves took a seat at the head of the table, motioning for everyone to sit. Sarah chose the farthest seat from her siblings. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his tone now purely professional. "We're here to go over the last will and testament of William Ernesto Lawson." He opened a folder and pulled out several papers. "I'll keep the legalese to a minimum. William's will is relatively simple. His assets were limited, but his instructions were specific." Ryan leaned forward. "We've been reviewing his finances, Michael. Caroline and I are prepared to deal with any remaining debts." Reeves looked up. "That's generous, but unnecessary. William's accounts were in order," he continued, sorting through the documents. "I'll begin with the smaller bequests. To Ryan Lawson, William leaves his collection of vintage auto manuals and the sum of $50,000. Ryan's brows lifted. 50,000? Where would he even life insurance? Reeves nodded. He kept a modest policy. To Caroline Lawson. He continued. He leaves his vinyl record collection and the sum of $50,000. Caroline glanced sideways at her husband, murmuring something Sarah couldn't hear. The records are sentimental, but the money is unexpected, she said aloud. Sarah remained silent, hands resting atop the photo album. She had expected nothing more than a keepsake, maybe a letter. Certainly not money. Reeves cleared his throat. Now to the primary bequest. To Sarah Lawson, William leaves Lawson's Inn and all its contents, including the attached apartment, all equipment, inventory, and any additional assets connected to the property. A stunned silence filled the room. Then Ryan laughed, loud and bitter. The inn? Caroline's smile vanished. Her expression darkened. That property is in a key commercial zone, Michael. It's worth far more than what Ryan and I received. This is completely imbalanced. Reeves remained composed. William was very clear about his wishes. The inn goes to Sarah, along with everything in it. Sarah sat frozen, struggling to absorb what she'd just heard. The inn. Her father had left her the business, his livelihood, his home for more than 4 decades. This is absurd, Ryan said, his voice rising. Sarah doesn't know the first thing about running a business. She can't even manage her own budget. Dad must have been confused when he signed this. I assure you, Reeves replied calmly, he was of sound mind. The will was updated just 8 months ago, well before any health issues surfaced. Caroline turned toward Sarah, her expression a blend of disbelief and simmering annoyance. What did you say to him? She demanded. How did you convince him to do this? Sarah finally found her voice. I didn't say anything. I had no idea. Right, Ryan cut in with a scoff. You had no idea he was handing over commercial property worth hundreds of thousands. Reeves raised a hand to settle the tension. If I may continue. William left a letter he asked me to read. He unfolded a single page and began. My dear children, if you are hearing these words, it means I have passed on to whatever comes next. I hope it's somewhere with good fishing and better coffee. Sarah smiled despite herself. That sounded exactly like her father. I know my decision regarding Lawson's Inn may come as a surprise to some of you. Ryan, Caroline, you've built successful lives and careers. You have comfort, stability, and more than enough means. You don't need a small, aging motel to complete your portfolios. Sarah has faced her own challenges, a difficult divorce, raising 2 remarkable boys on her own, working long hours just to stay afloat. Through it all, she has never lost her generosity, her spirit, or her kindness. You may see the inn as a burden, an outdated property with limited revenue. But to me, it has always stood for something more. Independence, hope, and the American dream I pursued when I arrived here with nothing. It is my legacy, and I entrust it to the child who I believe will understand what it represents. Sarah Mejia, I know this responsibility may feel heavy, but I believe in you. Lawson's has more potential than meets the eye. Take your time, explore what's possible, and remember, sometimes the most valuable treasures are hidden in plain sight. Ryan, Caroline, I leave you with this. Real wealth isn't measured in dollars or deeds. It's found in the lives we touch and the love we give. I'm proud of you both, but I hope someday you'll see that success without compassion is an empty thing. With all my love, your father, William Lawson. When Reeves finished, silence fell over the room. Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks. Her father's words wrapped around her like a warm hug. Ryan broke the silence, his voice tight. This is insane. Dad clearly wasn't thinking clearly. That place hasn't turned a profit in years. That's not entirely true, Reeves said mildly. While revenue has declined, the business remains stable. And as you noted, the property itself holds significant value. Caroline leaned forward, her voice softer but no less insistent. Sarah, be reasonable. You can't seriously want to run a motel. If you sell it to us, you could use the money for a better apartment, maybe even buy a little house for you and the boys. Sarah glanced down at the photo album in her lap, at the picture of her father, grinning proudly the day he bought the inn. This was his dream, his legacy. Could she really just let it go? I need time to think, she said quietly. Ryan made a dismissive sound. What's there to think about? Ryan snapped. That's enough, Ryan. Reeves interjected, his voice firm. William's wishes were clear. The property belongs to Sarah now, and what she chooses to do with it is entirely her decision. As the meeting wrapped up, Sarah remained seated, trying to process everything, while her siblings gathered their things. Caroline paused on her way out, lowering her voice as she approached. Think about what's best for your boys, Sarah. That place is a money pit. Ryan and I are prepared to offer you $25,000 for it. Sarah looked up at her sister. $25,000? For a commercial property in a growing district? Caroline's smile didn't reach her eyes. We're trying to help you, Sarah, to spare you the burden of dealing with a failing business. I'll think about it, Sarah replied quietly. Her voice was calm, but inside, doubt rippled. Was she clinging to a ghost of a dream? Was it foolish to believe her father saw something more in that old building? Something she was meant to inherit, to understand, to protect? When everyone had gone, only she and Michael Reeves remained in the conference room. The attorney looked at her with soft sympathy. Your father loved you deeply, Sarah. She nodded, still stunned. The inn, it needs a lot of work. Yes, Reeves agreed. But William was very clear. Everything on the property goes to you. He repeated that several times when we wrote the will. Sarah looked up, puzzled. What exactly did he mean by that? Reeves gave a small smile. I'm not entirely sure, but knowing William, I believe there's more to Lawson's than meets the eye. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small envelope. He also asked me to give you this privately. Sarah accepted it with shaking hands. Inside was a heavy brass key, old-fashioned, and a folded note. Some doors are hidden in plain sight. Look with your heart, not just your eyes. Love, Poppy. She stared at the message, a swirl of confusion and curiosity replacing the numbness that had dominated the last few days. A lump formed in her throat. That familiar signature, Poppy, brought back memories of bedtime stories, of cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings, of the man who always believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. Did my dad ever mention anything unusual about the inn? She asked. Reeves considered. Not unusual exactly, but he was insistent about keeping full ownership. Always said Lawson's was more than a business. He paused. Whenever you decide, Sarah, don't rush. Sarah slipped the key and note into her purse. I'm not selling, she said, surprised at how firm her voice sounded. At least not yet. I owe it to my father to understand what this place meant to him. 2 days later, the key still weighed heavily in Sarah's pocket as she pulled into the cracked lot of Lawson's Inn. Since the will reading, Ryan and Caroline had been relentless, calling her multiple times a day. Their latest offer had jumped to $50,000, with Ryan saying it would put her out of her misery. But Sarah had held her ground. She needed answers. It was early Saturday morning. Her sons were in the car, quietly watching as she stepped out and approached the building that was now, improbably, hers. Lawson's Inn had clearly seen better days. The once bright blue sign was faded and peeling, the word vacancy barely legible. Only 2 of the 4 rooms appeared usable, and the small reception office was cluttered with faded flyers and empty coffee cups. To anyone else it might have looked like a liability, but to Sarah it was something else entirely. A question waiting to be answered. The whole place seemed forgotten, like it had simply stopped trying. Yet as Sarah stood there, the memories came rushing back. Sitting on the counter as a child while her father rang up customers, learning to stock shelves as a teenager, bringing the boys here when they were little, watching them sprint through the narrow aisles while William slipped them candy bars when he thought Sarah wasn't looking. Mom? Are we going in? Jamie called from the car. Sarah nodded and waved them over. Yeah, come on. The twins approached cautiously, their expressions skeptical as they looked up at the building. This is ours now? Noah asked, nudging a weed poking through a crack in the pavement. Why would Abuelo give us a broken motel? It's not broken, Sarah said gently. It just needs some care. She unlocked the front door. The bell above it jingled, familiar and unchanged. Inside, the light was dim, dust motes drifting lazily through the sunlight that managed to slip past the grimy windows. The small reception area was sparsely furnished. A counter, a few worn chairs, a wall of keys still labeled with room numbers. It smells like Grandpa, Jamie said softly, her voice full of memory. Sarah nodded, blinking quickly. The scent of old paper, floor wax, and something floral her father always liked. It was all still here. He had poured so much of his life into this place. "Let's check out the upstairs apartment," she suggested. In the back of the reception room, a door labeled private opened to a narrow staircase. The apartment upstairs was small, but surprisingly neat. A living dining combo, a tiny kitchen, 2 modest bedrooms, and a single bathroom. The furnishings were old but clean. Bookshelves lined with well-worn volumes in both English and Spanish, a hand-carved chess set, and framed photos from happier days. "It's tiny," Noah observed, peeking into one of the bedrooms. "Where would we even sleep?" Sarah hesitated. She hadn't seriously considered moving in. Their apartment back in town was cramped, yes, but it was close to the boys' school and her diner shifts. Still, there was something about this place, something that felt like home. "We could make it work," she said slowly. "This could be your room. I'd take the smaller one." "What about the motel part?" Jamie asked, always the pragmatic one. "Would you run it?" That was the question, wasn't it? Could she? Should she? "I don't know yet," Sarah admitted. "First, I need to understand what we've really inherited." They headed back downstairs. Sarah moved behind the reception desk, taking in the aging cash register, the shelf of local brochures, the lottery ticket stand. It all looked exactly the way William had left it. "What's through there?" Noah asked, pointing to a door behind the counter. "That's the office." The office was small, just enough space for a desk, a filing cabinet, and a safe in the corner. Papers were still neatly arranged on the desk, and the wall calendar was frozen on the month William had passed, as if time had stopped here. Sarah sat in her father's chair, running her fingers over the worn wood surface. What had he meant with the key in that cryptic note? She began opening drawers, mostly filled with office supplies, invoices, and years of tax documents. "Mom, look at this," Jamie said, examining a shelf along the wall. "These books, they're not just in English or Spanish." Sarah joined her, and sure enough, there were books in Russian, German, Arabic, Chinese, even a few in scripts she couldn't recognize. "I didn't know Grandpa spoke all these languages," Noah said, running his fingers along the spine of a book printed in Cyrillic. "Neither did I," Sarah replied. Her father had always spoken fluent English and Spanish, but she had never once heard him use another language. The discovery left her uneasy. What else didn't she know about William Lawson? She turned to the filing cabinet and pulled open the top drawer. Folders were neatly arranged. Invoices, receipts, insurance paperwork, all the standard categories you'd expect for a small business. But tucked in the very back was a folder labeled simply, Correspondence. Inside were letters and postcards from countries all over the world. Some were addressed to her father, while others bore names she didn't recognize. The languages varied. Some she could identify, others completely unfamiliar. "This is strange," she murmured, setting the folder aside for a deeper look later. The bottom drawer was locked. Sarah tried the office key, but it didn't fit. On instinct, she pulled out the brass key her father had left her in the envelope. It slid into the lock effortlessly. The drawer opened to reveal a strange assortment of items, none of which belonged in a motel office. A shortwave radio, a laminated card containing what looked like encryption keys, several passports under different names, all with photos that resembled her father at various ages, and a leather-bound journal filled with writing she couldn't decipher. "What is all this stuff?" Noah asked. "I'm not sure," Sarah said slowly. "But I think there was more to your grandpa than we ever knew." Also inside the drawer was a small leather pouch. She opened it to find bundles of foreign currency. Euros, pounds, yen, even rupees and francs. A quick estimate told her it was worth several $1,000s. "Was he planning a trip?" Jamie asked. "Maybe," Sarah said, though she didn't believe it. Not with the fake passports and coded journal. Something much bigger was at play here. Her gaze drifted to the old safe in the corner. It had a worn combination dial, no keypad. Sarah knelt in front of it, thinking. She tried her father's birthday, then hers, then the date he bought the inn. Nothing worked. "Try our birthday," Jamie suggested. Sarah turned the dial. 1-24-10. A soft click. Inside were several USB drives, a small handgun, and a stack of old photographs. The images stunned her. Her father appeared in many of them, often standing beside people in military uniforms, formal suits, or diplomatic settings. In one, he was shaking hands with a man who bore a striking resemblance to the current CIA director, though that had to be impossible. "Mom? Who are these people with Grandpa?" Noah asked. I don't know," she admitted. What had her father been part of? This was far beyond the life of a quiet motel owner. Before she could begin to piece together any theories, the front bell jingled sharply. Startled, Sarah quickly returned the items to the safe and locked the drawer, slipping the key back into her pocket. She motioned for the twins to follow her out. "We're not actually open yet." She called toward the front, then stopped. Ryan stood just inside the doorway, his expression tight with impatience. Beside him was a man in a sleek suit, holding a leather portfolio. "There you are," Ryan said, as if they'd been waiting for hours instead of showing up uninvited. "I've been calling you all morning." Sarah glanced at her phone, silenced. "I was busy," she said coolly. "What do you want?" Ryan gestured toward the man beside him. "This is Howard Blackwell. He's a developer, and he's interested in buying the property." Howard stepped forward, extending his hand. "Miss Lawson, a pleasure." Sarah didn't take it. "I'm not interested in selling." Ryan sighed, exasperated. "Don't be difficult. Howard's offering $200,000. The number stopped her cold. $200,000. That kind of money could change everything. $200,000. It could erase so many problems. A down payment on a new home, savings for the boys' future college tuition, relief from the relentless strain of bills. But the items in that drawer, the safe, the coded journal, the foreign passports, what was her father trying to tell her? "I need time to consider my options," Sarah said at last. Howard gave her a smile that felt too rehearsed. "Of course, taking on a property like this is a major responsibility." Ryan leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Be realistic, Sarah. You're a waitress. You don't know the first thing about managing a motel. Dad left you a burden, not a gift." Sarah kept her gaze fixed on him. "Boys," she said calmly, "why don't you go back upstairs and look through more of those books?" Once the twins had disappeared up the staircase, she turned to face Ryan and Howard. "Let me make this absolutely clear. I'm not selling today. Not to you. Not to any developer. My father left me this inn for a reason, and I intend to understand what that reason was before I make any decisions." Howard glanced at Ryan, clearly uneasy. "Perhaps we should revisit this conversation once Ms. Lawson has had more time to settle into her new role." "Fine," Ryan muttered. "But don't let nostalgia blind you. This place is falling apart. It needs everything. Plumbing, roofing, new signage, just to be viable." "I'll figure it out," Sarah said. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." Back in the office, she reopened the locked drawer and pulled out the journal. Flipping through the pages, she saw columns of dates, names, locations, meticulously recorded, but in some kind of cipher. "Mom?" Jamie's voice called from the doorway. "Someone's here." Sarah closed the drawer quickly and followed her daughter out. Standing near the front desk was a woman in her mid-50s. Her appearance was plain, but her posture was upright, her eyes alert and discerning. "Good morning," Sarah greeted her. "We're not officially open yet." The woman looked her over. "You must be William's daughter." Something in her tone gave Sarah pause. "You knew my father?" "Well enough," the woman said. Her accent was subtle but distinct, Eastern European. Russian, maybe. Sarah suddenly recalled the books in Cyrillic upstairs. "I'm sorry," Sarah said. "We're still getting things sorted." "Of course, it's a lot to manage," the woman said. "Your father was a very special man. Impossible to replace." She seemed about to continue, but her eyes flicked toward the twins and she changed tack. "Will you be keeping the business open?" "I haven't decided yet," Sarah replied. "Understandable." The woman reached into her purse but then froze. Her hand jerked awkwardly and something fell to the floor. Sarah instinctively bent down. A passport. Not American. The lettering was Cyrillic, and the emblem on the cover marked it as diplomatic. "I'll get that," the woman said quickly, stepping forward. But Sarah had already picked it up. "You're a diplomat?" "Just a junior consular aide," the woman replied lightly. "Nothing exciting." She pulled out her wallet and, to Sarah's surprise, fanned out 5 crisp $100 bills. "Perhaps we can forget this little slip. I'm technically not supposed to be shopping while on duty." "That's not necessary," Sarah said, pushing the money back. "Your secret's safe with us." You're very much like your father, the woman said quietly. He appreciated discretion. She returned the cash to her wallet, but handed Sarah a card. If you decide to reopen, call me. I'd be happy to be your first official customer. After the woman left, Sarah examined the business card. No title, no company, just a name and a phone number. That was weird, Noah muttered. Sarah nodded. I don't know what your grandfather was part of, but whatever it was, I think it's still connected to this place. Over the next week, Sarah divided her time between her shifts at the diner and slowly exploring Lawson's Inn. Sarah couldn't afford to quit the diner just yet, but she had started cleaning up the motel lobby and front desk area in her spare time. She took inventory, studied the day-to-day operations, and began piecing together how her father had run Lawson's Inn. The boys helped after school, at first reluctantly, but they slowly grew more interested as they uncovered more of their grandfather's old belongings. Strange customers continued to show up. There were about a dozen regulars who came like clockwork, always at the same times, buying only the most basic items, and often engaging in brief, hushed conversations in various languages. Sarah began documenting each interaction in a notebook, noting the visitors' appearances, the languages they spoke, and anything unusual they said or did. One man in particular stood out, a tall, broad-shouldered individual with a military bearing who arrived every Tuesday at precisely 10:15 a.m. When Sarah didn't respond to his greeting in German, he looked genuinely startled. "William did not teach you?" he asked. "That's unexpected." Sarah's exploration of the motel's secrets was soon interrupted by two unpleasant developments. First, Caroline showed up, accompanied by a lawyer. "We have a statement from Dad's doctor," she said, her voice dripping with concern that didn't feel remotely sincere. "It confirms that his cognitive decline may have impaired his judgment. We're not trying to create conflict, Sarah. But if he wasn't of sound mind, the will might not hold." Sarah showed them the door. Then she immediately called Michael Reeves. "Don't worry," the attorney assured her. "Your father completed a full cognitive evaluation right before he updated his will. It's ironclad." The second complication came from Greg. He had filed an emergency motion with the court regarding custody of the twins, citing Sarah's erratic behavior, her decision to take on a failing motel, and her potential relocation to the apartment above it as signs of instability. When Sarah called him to confront him, his real motivation became clear. "I heard about the developer's offer," he said. 200 grand could solve a lot of problems, including my concerns about the boys' living conditions. So now Greg, Ryan, and Caroline were all in on it, pressuring her from different angles to sell. But then someone unexpected returned. Elena Vasov. She walked into the lobby without preamble. "Have you gone through your father's files?" she asked. Sarah hesitated, unsure how much to share. "Some of them," Elena nodded. "The journal in the locked drawer. Have you decoded it?" Sarah froze. How did she know about that drawer? About the journal? Elena gave a small, knowing smile. "William and I were colleagues, in a manner of speaking. The code is a basic substitution cipher. The key is the date of your birth." Sarah's mind spun. "Who are you?" she asked directly. "A friend," Elena replied. "One who understands that what you've inherited goes far beyond a rundown property." "You mean the strange customers?" "Yes," Elena said simply. "They come for something more valuable. This place serves a purpose, a very specific purpose. Your father maintained it for nearly 30 years. "What kind of purpose?" Sarah asked, though deep down she already had suspicions, no matter how far-fetched they seemed. Elena met her gaze. "I think you already know. Your father wasn't just a motel owner." "Was he a spy?" Sarah asked quietly. "Not exactly," Elena replied, "but he worked with people like me, people who need safe, discreet places to meet, to exchange sensitive information, reliable intermediaries. Your father provided that." She paused. "And there's more to this place than you found. The apartment isn't the only hidden space, and below, that's where the true value lies." Before Sarah could ask more, Elena's phone buzzed. She checked the screen, her expression turning sharply alert. "I have to go. But be careful, Sarah. Your father had enemies as well as allies. And now that you're digging, you're on their radar too." "Whose radar?" Sarah asked. "Both sides," Elena said cryptically. "Those who respected your father's work and those who didn't." She headed for the door, but just before she exited, she turned back. The key he left you? It doesn't just open the drawer. That night, after finishing up at the inn, Sarah brought the coded journal back to her apartment. Using her birth date as the cipher key, she began decoding the entries. What emerged stunned her. The notebook didn't contain simple business logs. These were records, detailed, structured notes on meetings, information handoffs, and movements of people who had passed through Lawson's Inn over the course of decades. The entries never explicitly revealed the purpose behind each interaction, but the implications were undeniable. Her father, her quiet, steady, motel-running father, had been operating some kind of intelligence network. From the inn, Sarah leaned back in her chair, journal resting on her lap, and stared blankly at the ceiling. She felt as if the floor beneath her had shifted. How much of her father's life had been hidden behind that warm, reassuring smile? How many times had she walked past people in the cafe or lobby, never realizing the depth of the world he was quietly holding together? The next day brought more confirmation of that growing suspicion. First, a health inspector showed up. He claimed he'd received anonymous complaints and seemed determined to uncover every possible violation. He checked under floorboards, behind vending machines, in every bathroom stall, eventually issuing citations for minor issues Sarah suspected hadn't raised an eyebrow when her father was alive. Later, she received notice that the inn's scheduled linen service had been canceled due to a supposed non-payment. But according to the payment records she'd reviewed the day before, the account was current. Then came the graffiti. Sarah arrived early the next morning to find angry, red paint scrawled across the main entrance. Strange symbols she didn't recognize, and a single chilling word: leave. She stood there for several long minutes, heart pounding. Part of her wanted to turn around, to pretend she hadn't seen it, to let someone else deal with whatever this was turning into. But she couldn't. But Sarah Lawson was William's daughter. And if her father had taught her anything, it was that when the world tried to shove you aside, you plant your feet and hold your ground. That evening, after asking Mrs. Patel to watch the boys, Sarah returned to the inn alone. Elena's words echoed in her mind. The key he left you, it doesn't just open the drawer. What else could it unlock? She moved deliberately through every room, testing the brass key on every lock in the building. Nothing. Then, in the office, she paused. Running her hand along the back wall, she noticed something just behind the filing cabinet, a faint discoloration, subtle, but definitely there. Sarah shoved the cabinet aside, revealing what looked like a seam in the wall. She pressed lightly at several points. Click. A small panel slid open, revealing a hidden keyhole. Her breath caught. In that moment, Sarah wasn't just a daughter uncovering her father's secrets. She was someone on the edge of understanding who she really was, and what she might be capable of. With trembling fingers, she slid the brass key in. The wall gave a faint shudder, then swung inward. Behind it, a narrow hallway. She grabbed a flashlight from the office drawer and stepped through. The corridor led to a small chamber. There, in the center of the space, was an old but intact service elevator. A numeric keypad was mounted beside the door. Sarah stared at it. She tried her birth date again. 5/11/82. Red light. Wrong code. She thought back. Her father's birthday? The boy's birthday? The day he purchased the inn? Nothing worked. Then she remembered the code she'd used for the safe. 12/24/10. She had assumed it was the boy's birthday. December 24th, 2010. But what if it wasn't? What if it was a different date altogether? European format. She entered the numbers. 122410. A green light flashed. The elevator door slid open, and Sarah stepped inside. There were only 3 buttons inside the elevator: G for ground, B for basement, and one marked simply with the number 3. Sarah pressed B first. The elevator descended smoothly, but the ride felt longer than it should have for a single level. When the doors finally opened, she stepped into a space that didn't resemble anything in the motel above. Before her was what looked like a fully equipped communication hub, complete with multiple computer workstations, satellite terminals, radio systems, and filing cabinets lined along the walls. One wall displayed maps marked with pins and cryptic notations. Another had photographs, some of her father with what looked like officials or agents, others of unfamiliar individuals. In the center of the room stood a large metal table with secure phone lines and coded keypads. Sarah approached one of the computer workstations and hit the power button. It whirred to life. A password prompt appeared on the screen. She tried her birth date again. Nothing. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on a framed photo sitting beside the monitor. Her father standing proudly in front of Lawson's Inn on its opening day. The date printed beneath the image, 8/15/78. She entered that. The screen unlocked instantly. Folders, documents, databases of names and places populated the desktop. And there, standing out from the rest, was a single video file labeled, "For Sarah." She clicked. Her father's face appeared on screen. He looked older than she remembered, tired but resolute. "Sarah, Mia," he began softly. "If you're seeing this, it means you've found the key, both literally and figuratively. You've discovered the truth about Lawson's Inn and about who I really was." He took a breath. "What I'm about to say may sound impossible, but every word is true. Now that I'm gone, you must know everything." He leaned forward, his voice firm. "Lawson's Inn isn't just a roadside motel. It's a CIA safe house and communication center. It was established in 1978. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. But even though she had guessed it, hearing it said aloud by her father was surreal. "When I came to this country, I wasn't just looking for a better life. I was recruited. The agency brought me in because of my linguistic abilities and ties back in Central America. My work during the Cold War helped safeguard both nations." He paused briefly, as if weighing every word. "For decades, this motel served as a secure location where intelligence agents could meet, debrief, and transfer information. Many of the so-called regulars you've probably seen are still active or retired operatives. This was a place they trusted, a place I built to serve that mission." Sarah swallowed hard. 9 languages, code-breaking experience, CIA asset. This was her father? William Lawson had always seemed like a quiet, hard-working man, but he had lived a second life, right under everyone's noses. A tremor ran through her shoulders. The man she thought she knew, who taught her to ride a bike, to patch tires, to roll cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings, had been living worlds she never knew existed. She felt both betrayed by the secrets and awed by the sacrifice. Her father's face returned to the screen. "Now, about what I've left you?" "Yes, the motel itself is part of it, but it's not the true inheritance." He gave a small, sad smile. "During my 30 years of service, I was well compensated. I never told anyone, not even your mother. There's approximately $50 million in offshore accounts. You'll find access credentials in the computer's encrypted files." He went on. "There are 12 properties in various countries, safe houses, together worth about $75 million. And there's also a collection of gold and historical artifacts, gifts from officials and grateful allies over the years, held in secure vaults. Estimated worth? Around $40 million. Finally, the CIA established a trust fund in recognition of my years of service. It's worth $35 million. Sarah felt the room spin around her. Her father had left her a legacy worth $200 million. All this time, he'd lived above a rundown motel, drove a decades-old pickup, and wore the same faded jacket every winter. She whispered to the screen, "Why didn't you tell us?" William's face remained steady. "You may wonder why I lived so modestly. Why I never told you about any of this," he said. "There are 2 reasons: security and values. In my line of work, secrecy was everything. Living extravagantly would have drawn the wrong kind of attention." He sighed softly. "But more than that, I wanted you kids to grow with integrity. I wanted you to learn the meaning of effort and purpose, to find strength through adversity." Sarah's throat tightened. All those years she'd cursed the leaking ceiling, the second-hand coats, the ramen dinners. They weren't signs of neglect. They were choices, meant to teach, not deprive. His eyes darkened just slightly. Marcus and Vanessa chose other paths, ones rooted in wealth, ambition, and prestige, and while I don't fault them, I had to make choices. He leaned in, his voice firm but full of love. "You, Sarah, despite all the hardship, you developed what I consider to be the highest qualities: empathy, endurance, and truth. That's why I entrusted you with Lawson's Inn and everything hidden beneath it." His expression turned solemn. "There's one last thing you should know. Elena Vasov is your CIA handler now." Sarah's jaw dropped. "She's been watching over you since I was diagnosed, keeping you safe, helping from the shadows. Trust her, Sarah. She'll help you learn everything you need to know. His gaze softened, as if looking right through the screen into her soul. I'm sorry for the secrets, Mija. I only ever wanted to protect you and serve something larger than myself. His final words wrapped around her heart like a warm hug. I'm proud of the woman you've become, the mother you are to my beautiful granddaughters. You are stronger than you realize, smarter than you believe, and you are, without question, my greatest accomplishment. The screen went dark. Sarah remained still, tears falling freely. She pressed her hand to her chest as though trying to hold the pieces of herself together. The motel wasn't a burden. It was a trust, a passing of the torch, a final, impossible gift from a father who'd never stopped believing in her, even when she couldn't believe in herself. It all made sense now. The cryptic customers, the multilingual books, Elena's warnings, her siblings' desperation to make her sell. As she wiped her face and stood, the computer suddenly beeped. Perimeter breach, north entrance. The alert flashed again. Heart-hammering, Sarah turned to the control panel, spotting a set of monitors she hadn't noticed earlier. She hit the power switch. The screens lit up. Live security feeds showed the gas station above, empty except for 2 masked intruders now working at the back door. They moved like professionals. Sarah grabbed her phone, dialing Elena without hesitation. Don't call the police, Elena said the moment she answered. We've been alerted. Stay where you are. There are men upstairs, Sarah whispered. They just broke in. They're not here for gas or cash, Elena replied. They're after the data downstairs. Is the elevator sealed? Yes, I think so. Good. That corridor was designed to stay hidden, even from thermal scanners. Don't move. Help is 4 minutes out. On the screen, Sarah watched one of the men head for the office. They're in the office, she whispered. They'll find the panel. No, they won't, Elena replied. Not without the key. Do you have it? Sarah checked her pocket. Still there. Yes. Then they can't get through. The panel reseals automatically once you activate the elevator. Sarah watched the man in the office run his fingers over the wall, exactly where the hidden panel was, but he passed right over it without seeing a thing. He seemed irritated, glancing at his watch and murmuring into what was clearly a comms device. Who are they? Sarah asked. Former associates of your father's, Elena replied vaguely. Targets, people who'd prefer certain truths, remained buried. On screen, the man inside the office had begun yanking bookshelves, growing increasingly agitated. His partner joined him. They exchanged sharp gestures, a few terse words, then both turned and exited toward the storefront. They're leaving, Sarah said, watching them disappear through the front entrance. Stay where you are, Elena instructed. Our team is almost there. They'll secure the building and escort you safely home. My daughters? They're fine. We've had a watch on your apartment since yesterday. The fact that her home had been under surveillance should have set off alarm bells. Instead, Sarah found it comforting. How long have you been watching us? Since William's diagnosis, Elena admitted. He worried that, after his passing, certain actors might view you or your girls as leverage or liabilities. He asked us to keep watch. Within minutes, Sarah spotted a new group entering the feed. 3 men and 1 woman, moving with the same smooth precision, but with very different intent. One relayed updates into a device, then moments later, the elevator began rising. When the doors slid open, Sarah stood face to face with a tall man in his early 60s. Salt and pepper hair, crisp posture, intelligent eyes. He looked more like a university dean than a government agent. Ms. Lawson, he said, offering his hand. James Harrington, I worked with your father for over 30 years. Sarah shook it. Those men, who were they? What did they want? Harrington sighed softly. Let's get you somewhere secure first. We'll explain everything. What about my car? One of our team will drive it back to your apartment. You'll come with me for now. As they exited the hidden facility, Sarah ventured. My father? Was he really worth $200 million? Harrington nodded. Your father was one of the most valuable intelligence assets we've ever had. His cover, an unassuming immigrant running a roadside motel, was flawless. No one looked twice. Yet he contributed to dozens of vital operations over 3 decades. His compensation reflected the scope of his contributions to national security. And no one in my family knew? Not even my mother? Your mother knew parts of it, Harrington said. not the financial scope, but the essence of his work. After she passed, William doubled down on his low-profile identity. It was both his shield and his way of honoring her. They arrived at a plain-looking office complex on the edge of town. But inside, it was anything but ordinary, lined with secure access points, communication hubs, and operational maps, much like those beneath Lawson's Inn. Elena was already waiting, this time dressed in the sharp attire of a senior intelligence official. "Sarah," she greeted, her voice softer. "I owe you an apology for the omissions. Protocol demanded discretion until we were sure you'd accessed William's final message." "Who were those men?" Sarah asked again. "They work for a group your father helped take down in the early 2000s, Elena explained. An organization involved in arms smuggling and black market intelligence trades. Thanks to operations funneled through Lawson's Inn, several key figures were arrested." "But not all?" "No. Some escaped prosecution, and they believe the property still holds evidence that could expose them," Elena said. "They're right," Harrington added. "William documented everything. He left behind more than just records. He left truth. And now they're coming after me," Sarah said quietly, "because I inherited it all." "Yes and no," Harrington replied, choosing his words with care. "They were monitoring Lawson's Inn even before William passed," Elena said quietly. "But once you refused to sell and began exploring the property so thoroughly, their concerns escalated. They need to know what you know, which is why we need to move quickly." She slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a document titled Succession Plan, Lawson Operations. "Your father prepared for this," Elena explained. "He left detailed instructions for transferring assets, securing data, and protecting you and your daughters. But you have a choice to make now. About your future." Sarah looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Harrington leaned forward. "Lawson serves an active role in our network. Ideally, that role continues, but only if you agree. William believed you could take this on, but he also gave us options if you didn't. If you decide against involvement, we'll relocate operations, decommission the underground facility, and sell the property." Sarah's heart raced. "And if I choose to keep it going?" "Then you'll be trained, supported, and compensated," Harrington said. "You'd become the new operator, maintaining the motel as a cover while continuing the work below." "I need time," Sarah said at last. "I need to think about my daughters." "Of course," Elena said. "But we should act now to secure your assets. Those men weren't the only ones interested in what your father left. Your siblings have been asking questions too, hiring investigators, financial analysts. What should I do first?" Harrington turned the laptop toward her. "Start by authenticating your access. William set the accounts to transfer upon his death, but full access requires biometric verification." For the next hour, Sarah followed instructions: fingerprints, retinal scan, voice recognition. One by one, locked accounts opened, investment portfolios, real estate holdings, offshore funds. The numbers were staggering. "All of this is mine?" she whispered. "Yes," Elena said, "though much of it is layered through structures for protection and secrecy." By the time they finished, morning light had begun to filter through the blinds. "You should get home," Harrington said. "Your girls will be waking up." As Sarah prepared to leave, Elena handed her a small device. "A secure phone. Use it to contact us directly." "One more thing," Sarah said. "My brother and sister, my ex-husband. Did I put them in danger by not selling sooner?" Harrington hesitated. "Your instincts are good. William said they would be. But there's something you should know about Marcus and Vanessa." Elena tapped the tablet, revealing photos and documents. "Marcus has been involved in questionable tech transfers, some of them connected, whether he knows it or not, to the same network your father helped shut down." "And Vanessa?" Sarah asked. "Real estate is a favored method for laundering money," Harrington said grimly. "She's helped several organizations clean funds through property deals. Again, she may be unaware of who she's working for, but legally, that won't matter." Sarah's stomach churned. Her siblings, so proud of their polished success, had built it on shady dealings. "Your father knew," Elena said quietly. It broke his heart. He spent his final months gathering evidence to turn over to federal authorities. "That's why he left it all to me," Sarah realized aloud, not just because he trusted her, but because he knew Marcus and Vanessa were compromised. Harrington nodded. William believed you were the only one who would use the inheritance responsibly. He hoped leaving everything to you would eventually bring Marcus and Vanessa's actions to light before they fell deeper into criminal territory. What about Derek? Sarah asked. My ex-husband? Elena hesitated. His new wife, Stephanie? She has known connections to a foreign intelligence agency. We believe she targeted Derek deliberately because of his connection to William and to you. The realization hit Sarah hard. Stephanie, who had once referred to her daughters as baggage, was a foreign asset. Derek hadn't left Sarah for love, but had likely been manipulated into the relationship. Does Derek know? She asked. We don't believe so. Harrington replied gently. So all this time none of us really knew who my father was, Sarah said quietly, and all of us have been used or manipulated in some way. Your father did everything he could to protect you, Elena said, and now we'll do the same. But you have to be careful. The men who came to Lawson's Inn that night will try again. And your siblings, once they realize how much you know, might get desperate. Sarah's hands tightened around the coffee cup in front of her, knuckles white. It was a strange comfort that her father had trusted her with so much, but it was also a terrifying responsibility. She wasn't just guarding secrets anymore. She was protecting her children, her past, and a legacy built in the shadows. When Sarah got home, Mrs. D'Souza reported that the girls had slept peacefully. Sarah thanked her and saw her off. By the time Emma and Lily woke, Sarah had made her decision. She would accept her father's legacy, all of it. She would protect his work and use the resources he left her to create a future for her daughters. But she would do it her way, honestly and openly. Mom, you're home early, Emma said, finding Sarah sitting at the kitchen table. Something happened, Sarah said, smiling. Something big, and I think it's time I tell you both the truth about Grandpa's Inn. As her daughters listened, wide-eyed, to a carefully worded version of the truth, Sarah felt a burden lifting. Her father had carried his secrets alone for decades. She wouldn't make that same mistake. She would trust her circle and build support, not isolation. And as she spoke, she saw something shift in her daughter's eyes. Not fear, but fascination, pride. They weren't just hearing about a place. They were hearing about a legacy they were now part of. So, we're rich now? Lily asked once Sarah finished. We have resources, Sarah corrected. And we'll use them the way Grandpa would have wanted. Not to flaunt, not to stop working hard, but to build something meaningful and to help people. What about Uncle Marcus and Aunt Vanessa? Emma asked. And Dad, are you going to tell them? Sarah hesitated. That's more complicated. There are things about your uncle and aunt I'm still trying to understand. And your father, I have to be very careful with him because of Stephanie. She's fake, Lily muttered. We could have told you that. Despite everything, Sarah laughed. Her daughters had seen through Stephanie's act long before the intelligence files confirmed it. So what now? Emma asked. Are we moving to the inn? I think we should, Sarah said. At least for now. It needs a little work, but it's a fresh start. And I think it's what Grandpa would have wanted, to keep Lawsons in the family. To her surprise, the girls nodded. Okay, Lily said. But I'm not cleaning the vending machines. Can we paint our room? Lily asked one morning. Absolutely, Sarah said with a smile. We'll make it our own. As they debated colors and rearranged furniture in their minds, Sarah's secure phone buzzed with a message from Elena. Meeting at 2 p.m. Critical information about your siblings' activities. Car will pick you up. 2 weeks had passed since Sarah uncovered the truth about Lawson's Inn. Now, she stood behind the front desk, watching as her usual morning visitors trickled in. Now that she knew who they really were, intelligence agents, foreign assets, operatives, their behaviors made sense. The precise routines, brief coded conversations, shifting languages, it was all part of a carefully constructed cover for something far more important. Sarah had spent the past weeks training under Elena and Harrington's guidance, learning how to manage the protocols and secure systems her father had operated in secret for decades. She had also begun minor renovations using a sliver of her inheritance. A fresh coat of paint here, upgraded locks and infrastructure there. Enough to modernize the inn without drawing attention. Emma and Lily had embraced their new home quickly. The apartment above the inn, once cleaned and filled with their personal touches, felt more spacious and grounded than their cramped old rental. The girls now walked to the same school, and Sarah dropped them off each morning before opening the inn's lobby and cafe. There were still moments, quiet ones after closing, when Sarah sat in the office and felt overwhelmed. The weight of her father's legacy pressed down on her shoulders. She had stepped into a role she never asked for, and though she was adapting quickly, the fear of failing, of not being enough, lingered like a shadow. But in those moments, she reminded herself of the girls' laughter upstairs, of her father's trust, and of the purpose she now served. To anyone looking in, they were a typical family running a quiet local business. Beneath the surface, Sarah now oversaw an international intelligence relay site and managed one of the most covert information hubs in the region. "Morning, Miss Lawson," said an older gentleman, placing a coffee and local paper on the counter. Distinguished in a blazer and crisp slacks, he looked like any retiree, but Sarah now knew he was a former CIA station chief who still consulted on sensitive operations. "Good morning, Mr. Jenkins," Sarah replied, ringing up the items. "The usual today?" He nodded, then leaned in. Harrington mentioned there might be a package. She reached below the counter and handed him a sealed envelope. "Just arrived yesterday," she said. This was how it worked. Simple exchanges masking high-level communications. Sarah had learned the signals, the cadence, the codes. The bell above the door jingled again. Sarah glanced up, and her heart sank slightly. "Marcus, you're seriously running this place?" he said, his voice caught between disbelief and sarcasm. "Good morning to you too, Marcus," she said evenly. "Yes, the girls and I live upstairs and I'm managing the inn now." "This is absurd, Sarah. You're playing house just to spite us." "I'm honoring Dad's wishes," she said, calm but firm. "And so far, things are going just fine." Marcus stepped closer to the counter, lowering his voice. "Vanessa and I have been patient, but this has gone on long enough. Our final offer, $300,000, way over market value, especially with all the back taxes William owed." "There are no back taxes," Sarah replied, unfazed. "Dad's finances were in perfect order. I've gone over everything with his accountant." "That's not what our investigators found," Mark said, voice tight. "The property has liens against it. Sarah, you're inheriting debt, not assets." "Your investigators are mistaken," Sarah replied evenly. "But I appreciate your concern." Before Mark could say more, the bell above the door chimed again. Elena stepped in, now dressed in her usual disguise as a local customer. "Good morning," she said cheerfully, nodding toward Sarah, then eyeing Mark with casual curiosity. "Not at all," Sarah replied. "My brother was just leaving." Mark shot Elena a sharp glare before turning back to his sister. "This conversation isn't over. Vanessa and I are meeting with another attorney tomorrow. Dad wasn't of sound mind when he signed that will, and we can prove it." He stormed out, the door swinging shut behind him. Elena approached the counter, her expression composed. "Your brother seems upset," she observed. "He and Vanessa can't accept that Dad left them each just $50,000 while giving me Lawson's inn," Sarah explained. "They're trying everything to overturn the will." "They won't succeed," Elena said calmly. William was thorough in documenting his mental clarity, but their persistence concerns us, for other reasons. She glanced around to confirm they were alone, then lowered her voice. "The FBI has been building cases against both of them based on evidence your father compiled. Mark's connections with restricted technology exports, Vanessa's real estate dealings with flagged criminal groups. Arrests are likely soon." "When?" Sarah asked, her chest tightening. "Possibly within the week," Elena replied. "We're making sure you and the girls are fully secure first. Once your siblings are arrested, there will be media attention. About William, about the inn. We've drafted a cover story that protects all classified elements while giving a plausible public explanation." Sarah nodded, feeling her stomach knot. "And Derek? Stephanie?" "Counterintelligence has been monitoring Stephanie closely. She'll be dealt with after your siblings, to avoid alerting her. Your ex-husband appears to be unaware of her affiliations, but he will be questioned." Before Sarah could respond, her secure phone vibrated with a sudden alert. She checked it, her blood running cold. "The girls' school just called," she said, eyes wide. "Someone tried to pick them up, someone not on the approved list." Elena immediately took charge. "We'll have a team there in 5 minutes. Lock the inn. Don't go anywhere until I call." Sarah secured the doors and watched anxiously. Her heart pounded. Was it Vanessa or Stephanie? Whoever it was, trying to involve her children crossed a line and awakened something primal in her. 20 minutes later, Elena called with an update. They're safe, she confirmed. The school refused to release them, and our team is escorting them home now. The woman who attempted pickup is linked to Stephanie. By the time Emma and Lily returned with their security detail, Sarah had composed herself. She didn't want to scare them, but they needed to understand the danger had grown very real. Someone tried to pick you up from school today? Sarah told the girls as they sat at the kitchen table upstairs. Without my permission. Emma and Lily stared at her, wide-eyed. I need you both to be extra careful, Sarah continued. Don't go with anyone, even someone you know, unless I've told you it's okay. Was it Stephanie? Lily asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. She texted Dad yesterday saying she wanted to take us shopping this weekend, but he told her we were staying with you. That was news to Sarah. Dad didn't mention that to me. He probably forgot, Emma said with a shrug. He's been acting weird lately, really stressed. He and Stephanie fight a lot. I'm glad the school followed the rules and called me, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice calm. From now on, one of my friends will drive you to and from school, just to be safe. Because of Abu's secret work? Lily asked, lowering her voice dramatically, even though they were at home. Yes, Sarah confirmed, her tone serious. Some people are interested in his work, and they might try to use you to get to me, but I promise I won't let that happen. That evening, once the girls were asleep, Sarah met with Harrington and Elena in the underground facility beneath Lawson's Inn. The attempted school pickup had pushed everything forward. We need to move on your siblings now, Harrington said grimly. The attempt to take the girls shows they're desperate. They're escalating because they know the net is closing. I agree, Elena added. And there's something else. Our surveillance picked up a meeting between Mark and one of the men who broke in here 2 weeks ago. Sarah's stomach turned. They're collaborating now, Elena continued, which means the threat to you is greater than ever. What's the plan? Sarah asked quietly. The FBI will arrest Mark and Vanessa simultaneously tomorrow morning, Harrington explained. The charges will be made public by the afternoon. At the same time, Elena added, another team will detain Stephanie. She's being investigated for intelligence activities. As for the men working with Mark, we're tracking them. Once your siblings are in custody, we'll move on the rest. Sarah nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Stay here with the girls, Harrington instructed. Security will be in place. After the arrests, expect media interest. We've prepared a public statement for you, expressing your shock and support for the investigation. And what about Lawson's? Sarah asked. The facility underneath, if reporters start digging? The official story, Elena said, is that your father was a confidential informant for federal agencies. His hidden wealth will be attributed to reward payments for intelligence leading to major arrests. Sarah's voice softened. There's no other way? Harrington looked pained but resolute. Your father faced the same dilemma. He waited for months before submitting the evidence, hoping Mark and Vanessa would come to their senses. But their actions crossed too many lines. They're connected to serious criminal networks. William had to choose between his family and his country. I want to see the evidence, Sarah said, her voice steady. Before tomorrow, I need to understand exactly what they've done. Elena hesitated, then nodded. We can arrange that, but Sarah, it won't make tomorrow any easier. Throughout the night, Sarah reviewed the files her father had compiled on his own children. The evidence was meticulous and devastating. Mark had knowingly facilitated the transfer of restricted technology to groups tied to foreign intelligence services, accepting millions through offshore accounts. Vanessa had laundered over $100 million for drug cartels using her real estate firm, taking a cut from each transaction. By morning, Sarah had come to terms with what needed to be done. When Harrington called to confirm the arrests were underway, she felt a strange calm. This wasn't just about securing her father's legitimate legacy, it was about completing his final mission, making sure justice was served, even within their family. The media storm arrived faster than expected. By noon, both local and national outlets were reporting on the arrests of high-profile business leaders, Mark and Vanessa Lawson, on charges of technology export violations and money laundering. Their links to international criminal organizations were highlighted, along with the shocking revelation that the investigation had been launched using evidence gathered by their own father. Sarah kept Emma and Lily home from school, knowing full well they'd be bombarded with questions, or worse, judgment, from classmates whose families had worked with Mark or Vanessa. "Did Grandpa know what they were doing?" Emma asked softly, watching a clip of Vanessa being led into the federal courthouse. "Yes," Sarah replied gently. "He found out during his last year." "Is that why he gave everything to you instead of them?" Lily asked. Sarah nodded. "He knew I'd handle the inheritance responsibly, and he wanted to protect the work he did at Lawson's Inn." The most difficult call came that afternoon, from Daniel. He sounded shaken, desperate. "Sarah, have you seen the news? They've arrested Stephanie. They're saying she's some kind of foreign agent, and I've been questioned for hours about my ties to Mark and Vanessa." "Are you under arrest?" Sarah asked evenly. "No," Daniel replied. "They believe I didn't know anything." "But Sarah, this is insane. Your whole family's spies, criminals. What the hell is going on?" Sarah could hear the confusion in his voice and felt a flicker of sympathy. Daniel was many things: self-centered, unreliable, and a lackluster father, but he didn't appear to have knowingly been involved in espionage or crime. "I can't talk about it over the phone," she said carefully. "But Daniel, the girls need stability right now. They're going to hear things about their uncle, their aunt. Stephanie, I need you to stay calm, be supportive, and not make it harder for them." There was a long pause before he answered, voice subdued. "You're right. Can I come see them? I just want to make sure they're okay." Sarah agreed to a visit the next day, with the condition that he come alone and keep everything light for the girls' sake. As the day wore on, reporters began circling Lawson's Inn, drawn by its connection to the headline-grabbing arrests. Sarah stayed inside with the girls, grateful for the security detail keeping the media at bay. Elena managed the perimeter and updated her periodically. "Vanessa's attorney is already pushing the mentally incompetent father narrative," Elena reported during one check-in, claiming William was delusional in his final year, making up stories about their crimes. Sarah frowned. "That won't hold up." "It won't," Elena confirmed. "Your father made sure of that." The evidence was too conclusive, but that wouldn't stop them from smearing William's name. "And Mark?" Sarah asked. "Trying to negotiate a deal," Elena replied, her tone dry. "Offering up contacts in exchange for a lighter sentence." "Typical," Sarah muttered. "Mark always did look out for himself first." Throughout the chaos, Sarah kept Lawson's Inn open on schedule. She served the few loyal customers who braved the media circus outside and continued the critical operations below ground. That routine anchored her, gave Emma and Lily a sense of normalcy, and proved to the operatives relying on the site that the facility was still operational, even under public scrutiny. A week after the arrests, both Mark and Vanessa denied bail due to flight risk. Sarah opened the door to a visitor she hadn't expected. Daniel's mother, Joan. "I had to see you," Joan said, stepping into the apartment. "To make sense of all this. Daniel is falling apart. The girls must be so confused, and you're suddenly running a gas station and at the heart of a scandal?" Sarah had always appreciated her former mother-in-law. Joan had remained kind and supportive after the divorce, never warming to Stephanie and keeping a close bond with Sarah and the twins. "It's complicated," Sarah replied as she led Joan upstairs. "But the girls are doing okay." "They get that from you," Joan said, settling at the kitchen table. "But I need to ask, did you know?" Sarah considered her words. Joan was someone she could trust and deserved a level of explanation. "Not until recently," Sarah said gently. "After Dad passed and left me the inn, I discovered records, proof. That's when I contacted the authorities." She paused before continuing. "I didn't know anything about Stephanie either, not until the investigation started." "All these years," Joan said, shaking her head. "I thought William was just an ordinary man running an old business. Then Daniel calls me, rambling about spies, hidden rooms, and millions of dollars. It sounded like something from a spy movie. Parts of it are," Sarah said with a soft smile. "But it was real. Dad worked with federal agencies. The inn was a cover, and he was well compensated for what he did. And now it's all yours, Joan said with quiet wonder. The inn, the assets, the responsibility. She reached out, covering Sarah's hand with her own. I told Daniel he was a fool for leaving you. You were always the one with the backbone, with morals. William saw that too, didn't he? Sarah blinked quickly, fighting emotion at the unexpected support. Thank you. That means a lot. It's been a lot. I can imagine, Joan said. Let me help however I can, with the girls, with anything. Just being here helps, Sarah said sincerely. They need familiar faces, people who care. Joan nodded, promising to visit regularly. As she stepped toward the door, she paused and turned back one last time. You know, seeing you here in William's place, it fits you. You've got his quiet strength, his dignity. The inn is in capable hands. The next morning, Sarah received a call from Jacob Morris. Vanessa's attorney has officially dropped the contest of William's will, he informed her. Given the criminal charges, they've decided to stop pursuing the inheritance. Practically, he added, this means there are no longer any legal challenges to your ownership of Lawson's Inn or any associated assets. It was a small but meaningful win amid the upheaval. Sarah's legal claim to her father's legacy was now unquestionable, even as her siblings faced years behind bars. That evening, Sarah sat down with Emma and Lily in the cozy living room above the inn. The space now bore their stamp. Pictures of family, soft pillows, books, and drawings that made it feel like home. These weeks have been a whirlwind, she began. With Grandpa's secret work, your aunt and uncle's arrests, and the reporters, I just wanted to check in. How are you both feeling about everything? The girls exchanged one of their silent looks before Emma responded. It's weird. Kids at school say our family is full of criminals and spies, but Grandpa wasn't a criminal, right? No, Sarah said firmly. He was a hero. He served this country for decades and helped keep people safe. And Aunt Vanessa and Uncle Mark? Lily asked. Are they bad now? Sarah paused. They made very serious mistakes. They chose to get involved in dangerous, illegal things. But that doesn't mean they didn't love you, and it doesn't mean you can't still care about them. Will they go to jail for a long time? Emma asked, always the one focused on facts. Most likely, Sarah answered honestly. But you can write to them, maybe visit if it's safe and they want that. They're still your family. Lily's eyes welled up. Everything feels different now. Dad's always upset when we see him. People look at us like we're weird. And you run an inn and do spy stuff. Sarah moved between her daughters, wrapping her arms around them. Yes, things are different, but different isn't always bad. She smiled softly. We have a stable home now. We don't have to stress about rent or school or health care, and we're continuing Grandpa's legacy. That's something to be proud of. She drew a breath. I've been thinking about what we want Lawson's Inn to be in the future, beyond its secret work. I want to rename it Williams Memorial Inn. I want it to be a successful business and a tribute to Grandpa. The girls immediately lit up with ideas, offering design suggestions and special features. Their excitement warmed Sarah's heart, reminding her that from chaos, new beginnings could rise. Later that night, once the girls had gone to bed, Sarah descended to the secure facility beneath the inn for her nightly meeting with Elena and Harrington. They were more than just contacts now. They were mentors, guiding her transformation from diner waitress to covert operations manager. The FBI finished with Mark's statements, Harrington said. He's naming names, detailing foreign connections. He's hoping for a deal. Is any of it useful? Sarah asked. Surprisingly, yes, Elena replied. Some of the contacts are previously unconfirmed, could lead to major intel. And Vanessa? Still in denial, Elena said dryly, claiming ignorance about where the money came from. Sarah shook her head. Not surprising. Mark would sell out his allies for immunity. Vanessa would rather go down pretending she was innocent. There's something else we need to discuss. Harrington's tone shifted slightly. Your father left a letter of recommendation for you, for a position with the Cultural Heritage Protection Division at the agency. Sarah blinked. What? A job recommendation, Harrington confirmed, posthumously. Elena offered a small smile. William believed you'd be a perfect fit. Your background in art history, your languages. We know you're fluent in Spanish and studying French, and your moral compass. The division focuses on recovering stolen artifacts and safeguarding heritage sites, Harrington added. It's a part-time role, compatible with managing the inn and raising Emma and Lily. I'd like to think about it, Sarah said, overwhelmed but intrigued. It's a lot to take in. Of course, Elena nodded. The offer stands. William was held in high regard here. As Sarah made her way upstairs, she paused in the inn's lobby, taking in the transformed space. Her father had chosen a life of humility, living modestly while serving his country in profound secrecy, quietly amassing wealth, but prioritizing purpose over possession. She moved to the window, gazing up at the stars. Somewhere up there, she hoped her father, and maybe her mother too, were watching. I won't let you down, she whispered. 6 months later, Lawson's Memorial Inn was a place reborn. Once a modest roadside stop, it now featured modern amenities, a cozy cafe area, and an understated star motif woven into its decor, an homage to both its name and its secret function. Business had more than tripled, attracting loyal townspeople and covert operatives alike. The upstairs apartment had been expanded and tastefully renovated. Sarah and her daughters, now both in their early teens, were thriving. Emma and Lily helped around the inn after school, took Spanish lessons to connect with their roots, and grasped just enough of their grandfather's clandestine work to understand the need for discretion. Sarah divided her time between running the inn, her responsibilities with the Cultural Heritage Protection Division, and parenting. The wealth William had left her remained mostly untouched. Aside from funding the inn's upgrades and launching the William Lawson Foundation, which offered scholarships to immigrant students and assistance for veterans. Mark and Vanessa had both been sentenced, 15 years for Mark, 12 for Vanessa. Sarah visited them monthly. The meetings were tense, neither had fully owned their actions. But Sarah believed in the value of maintaining a thread of family connection, however fragile. She hoped one day there might be healing. Dylan had been cleared of any involvement in Stephanie's espionage activities. The revelation that his new wife had targeted him to get close to Sarah's family rocked him to his core. The disgrace, combined with the shocking truths about the Lawson legacy, had forced a genuine transformation. Though a romantic reconciliation was out of the question, Sarah and Dylan had found a way to co-parent with new maturity and respect. Elena became more than a colleague. She became a friend and mentor. She began teaching Emma and Lily basic self-defense and had even started giving them lessons in Russian, much to their amusement and delight. Harrington remained a steady presence, dropping by regularly with books or historical items connected to Sarah's work in the Cultural Heritage Protection Division. The underground facility beneath Lawson's Memorial Inn continued to function as a vital intelligence node, with Sarah now confidently running operations. Her diligence and instinctive grasp of complex systems earned her the respect of seasoned operatives, many of whom noted she reminded them of William. One evening, Sarah stood behind the newly updated cafe counter. Lily was helping a customer pick from an assortment of artisan teas, while Emma carefully restocked a shelf of organic juices. Elena entered with her usual confidence, needing no cover story at this point. "Good evening, Lawson family," she greeted, accepting the mug of herbal tea Lily handed her with a grin. "How's business?" she asked, voice lowered just slightly. "Steady," Sarah replied with a knowing smile. "Both kinds." Their shorthand now flowed effortlessly, a nod to the inn's dual role as a local business and international intel node. "I have news," Elena said, her tone more focused now. "The Budapest team recovered the artifacts." Sarah's heart lifted. She had recently contributed intelligence that led to tracking a set of stolen medieval manuscripts smuggled through Eastern Europe. Her intel had been instrumental. "That's incredible," she said. "Will they be returned to the museum?" "With full credit to the anonymous cultural expert who made their retrieval possible," Elena replied with a smirk. After Elena left and the girls headed upstairs to do homework, Sarah took a quiet walk through the inn. The changes were striking. Modern finishes, ambient lighting, curated displays. But the real transformation had happened inside her and her daughters. They had gone from struggling paycheck to managing an international asset. They'd grown from being underestimated to living lives defined by purpose and integrity. Sarah paused at the bronze memorial plaque near the entrance. It featured a black and white photograph of William on the day he bought the inn and the inscription, William Lawson, 1950 to 2022, immigrant, patriot, guardian. His greatest legacy was not what he built, but what he protected. The words captured his essence perfectly. So the story has come to a close. And now, dear friends, yes, you who are still here, still watching or reading at this very moment, something in this journey must have touched your heart in some quiet, meaningful way. So let's pause, you and I, and take a breath together as we reflect on what this story really gave us. This was never just a story about secrets, inheritance, or hidden identities. It was about resilience, about what happens when life doesn't go as planned, when the world underestimates you, and when family wounds run deep, but you rise anyway. Sarah's journey wasn't about becoming a hero in someone else's eyes. It was about realizing she had always been strong enough. It reminds us, like the Stoics said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by what life throws at us, betrayals, responsibilities, loneliness. But Sarah teaches us that healing starts when we stop waiting for someone to rescue us. It begins when we choose to step forward, even through fear, even when we're unsure. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, Seneca once wrote. And maybe that's why facing the truth, painful as it is, sets us free. If you felt seen in Sarah's quiet battles or inspired by her slow, steady courage, then this story was never really fiction for you. It was a mirror. So before you go, if something in this journey sparked something inside you, hope, comfort, strength, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the soul. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary legacies are born not from wealth or power, but from the courage to stay standing when everything else falls apart. We're so glad you stayed till the end. Let's keep walking this road together.